I was 2 miles from signing my freedom when the world exploded in blue and red. A voice screamed from a bullhorn, ordering me to the pavement. I thought it was a mistake, wrong car, wrong guy, wrong morning. Then I heard the crime, Grand Theft Auto. Armed suspect. Possible 10 to 16. And I knew. The only person who could have set this up was sitting in a mediator's office 2 miles ahead, waiting for me to never arrive. My hands went up before my brain could catch up. Both palms lifted off the steering wheel, fingers spread wide like I could prove I wasn't a threat with empty hands alone. Exit the vehicle. Hands where I can see them. The voice was close, sharp, trained. I could hear the adrenaline underneath the command, the kind that makes good cops stay alert and scared cops pull triggers. So I moved slowly. Predictably. The way you move when your life depends on not surprising anyone. I'm exiting the vehicle now, I said, loud and calm. My hands are visible. I opened the door with 2 fingers, stepped onto the asphalt in my good suit, the one I'd worn specifically for this mediation because I wanted to look like a man who had his life together. My dress shoes hit the pavement. Around me, morning commuters slowed to rubberneck. Someone's phone was already angled out a cracked window, recording. I was about to be someone's viral content. The air smelled like burnt coffee and exhaust. A helicopter thumped somewhere overhead. This wasn't a routine traffic stop. This was a full response. Walk backward toward my voice. Do not turn around. I did exactly what he said. My pulse hammered in my ears, but I kept my face neutral, my movements controlled. I heard boots on gravel. Radios crackling. The metallic click of something being unholstered. Then the voice got closer. More specific. Marcus Thorne. My stomach dropped. They knew my name. This wasn't random. Yes, I answered. A pause, just long enough for someone to confirm my face matched whatever photo they were looking at. You're being detained, the officer said. This vehicle was reported stolen. Armed suspect advisory. Caller reported subject as unstable and possibly suicidal, en route to confront reporting party. Armed. Unstable. Suicidal. None of those words were true. But all of them were now in a police report with my name on it. I'm not armed, I said carefully, keeping my voice level. I'm not suicidal. And that car is registered to me. Keep your hands up. Do not move. I didn't. But my mind was already moving faster than my body could. This was my Tesla. Purchased outright. Title in my name. Insurance in my name. Registration current. There was no legitimate reason for it to be flagged as stolen. Unless someone had lied. And there was exactly one person who would lie to 911, who would weaponize police, who would risk my life to buy herself 90 minutes of advantage. My wife. Genevieve. Today was supposed to be simple. Final mediation hearing at 8:30 a.m. Sign the dissolution papers. Execute our prenuptial agreement. Walk away from 18 months of slow-motion heartbreak with our finances intact and our dignity mostly preserved. An amicable divorce. The kind where you don't destroy each other on the way out. Except Genevieve had just called a SWAT team on me. Which meant, amicable was over. I swallowed once and kept my voice steady. Officer, I said, I need you to check who filed this report and what time it was filed. Silence behind me. Then the sound of a radio clicking on. Dispatch, verify reporting party and timestamp on the stolen vehicle call. Static. A beat. Then a woman's voice, calm and professional. Stand by. The seconds felt like hours. Traffic crawled past. I stood there with my hands in the air, my career on hold, my entire morning disintegrating on the side of I-95. Another officer stepped closer. I could feel him sizing me up, looking for weapons, for sudden movements, for anything that matched the story they'd been told. "Why are you asking about the timestamp?" he said. "Because I know who called this in," I replied. "And I know why. I'm supposed to be in family court mediation right now. Final divorce hearing. If I'm not there, my wife gets leverage she doesn't deserve." "Divorce," the officer repeated. The word seemed to recalibrate something in his head. "I can prove this car is mine," I continued. "Registration is in the center console. Insurance is on my phone. My license matches the registration. This is not a stolen vehicle." He didn't argue. He didn't apologize. He did what good cops do when something doesn't add up, he verified. "Dispatch," he said into his radio, "confirm reporting party name and exact timestamp." More static. Then the dispatcher's voice came back, crisp and clear. "Reporting party is Genevieve Thorne. Report filed at 7:02 a.m. Caller stated subject stole vehicle during domestic dispute, subject is armed, has made suicidal statements, and is en route to confront caller at mediation hearing." 7:02 a.m. I'd been on the highway at 7:02. I'd left my house at 6:50, stopped for gas at 6:58, merged onto I-95 at 7:05. Genevieve had called 911 while I was already driving, while she was probably sitting in the mediator's waiting room, sipping coffee, watching the clock. The officer behind me went quiet. I heard him shift his weight. The energy changed. Not safer. Just different. Like the story he'd been operating under had just cracked open. "Mr. Thorne," he said, voice lower now, "your wife reported the vehicle stolen 20 minutes ago. She also stated you were armed and made statements about life insurance." I kept my breathing even. "Can I see exactly what she said?" Another pause. The sound of scrolling. Then the officer exhaled, a short, sharp breath that told me he'd read something he didn't like. "She told dispatch you'd been unstable for weeks," he said. "That you mentioned your life insurance policy yesterday. That you were headed to mediation to make her regret everything." My throat tightened. Because Genevieve hadn't just wanted me late. She'd wanted me credibly dangerous. She'd wanted a police report that said I was violent, erratic, suicidal, exactly the kind of man whose prenuptial agreement should be voided due to mental instability during dissolution. She wasn't delaying the mediation. She was building a legal narrative. The officer's radio crackled again. A new voice, older, calmer, authoritative. "Hold position. Do not cuff unless there's an immediate threat. Verify VIN and registration on scene before proceeding." The officer nearest me took a half step closer. "Do you have your license on you?" "Yes." "Back pocket." "Wallet." "I can tell you exactly where it is before I reach for it." He nodded. "Go ahead. 2 fingers only." I moved the way architects move when precision matters, slowly, deliberately, narrating every action. I pulled out my wallet, extracted my license, held it between 2 fingers, and waited. He took it. Checked it. Glanced at my car. "Registration in the console?" "Yes. And I can unlock the vehicle remotely if you need access. I can also show you my Tesla app, it has the VIN, ownership records, everything." He studied me for a long moment. Not hostile. Not friendly. Just, recalculating. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "Mr. Thorne, if your wife filed a false report claiming you were armed and suicidal, that's not just a delay tactic. That's felony-level false reporting. She put you at lethal risk. She put us at lethal risk." I kept my eyes forward. "I know." He looked back at his cruiser, then at his phone, then at me. And in that silence, I realized the worst part, Genevieve hadn't just tried to make me late. She'd tried to create a record. A police file. An incident report. Something she could cite in court, in custody motions, in restraining order petitions. If she called 911 at 7:02, what else had she already filed by 8:30? They verified the VIN first. One officer approached my Tesla with his hand still hovering near his holster, leaned down, read the number off the dashboard through the windshield. Another officer called it in. The dispatcher's voice came back 30 seconds later. VIN matches registration to Marcus Thorne. No prior stolen vehicle reports. No warrants. The rifles lowered. Not all the way, just enough to signal that I'd moved from immediate threat to person caught in someone else's lie. The officer holding my license looked at me differently now. Like I was evidence, not a suspect. "Mr. Thorne, do you consent to a search of the vehicle?" "No," I said calmly. "But I'll show you my registration and insurance, and I'll unlock the car remotely so you can see it's mine." He nodded. "That works." He walked with me to the driver's side. I kept my hands visible as I opened my Tesla app, pulled up the ownership screen, showed him the VIN, the registration date, the insurance policy number. I told him exactly where the paper registration was stored, and he opened the console himself while another officer watched me like I was a bomb that might still detonate. Registration, my name. Address, my name. License plate, my name. The officer exhaled once. Hard. Okay. A supervisor arrived. Sergeant Stripes. Mid-50s. The kind of cop who'd seen enough domestic calls to know when someone was being played. He looked at the report on the screen. Looked at me. Looked back at the screen. "You said your wife did this to sabotage a mediation hearing." "Yes, sir. Our final divorce mediation starts at 8:30. If I'm not there, she can claim I abandoned the process. Or worse, she can use this incident to argue I'm unstable and void our prenuptial agreement." The sergeant's jaw tightened. He read the report again, slowly this time. "She told dispatch you were armed," he said quietly, like he was talking to himself. "She said you were suicidal. She said you were coming to hurt her." "Can I see the exact wording?" I asked. He didn't hand me the screen, but he read it aloud. "Subject stole my vehicle after a heated argument. He's been acting unstable for weeks. Yesterday he mentioned his life insurance policy and said I'd regret this. I think he's armed. I think he's coming to the mediation to hurt me." Every word was a scalpel. Precise. Calculated. Designed to make me sound dangerous without being so absurd that dispatch would doubt her. "I want this documented as a false report," I said. "And I need a copy of the incident number." The sergeant nodded once. "You'll get an incident number." Then he turned to the officer who'd pulled me over. "Clear the stolen status. Now." The officer hesitated. "Sarge, we can't just. It's a false report," the sergeant cut him off. "We're clearing it pending verification with the registered owner, who is standing right here, cooperative, and clearly not armed or suicidal." The officer typed. Fast. Then the sergeant looked at me again. "Do you want to press charges against your wife?" "I want to get to mediation first," I said. "But yes. I'll be filing charges for false reporting." He studied me for a moment. Then he made a decision. "We're escorting you to the courthouse," he said. "Not because you're under arrest, because if she escalated this far once, she might do it again." I didn't argue. "Thank you." "What time did you leave your house this morning?" he asked. 6:50. "And when did we initiate the stop?" 7:18, I saw lights, pulled over immediately. He wrote it down. Good. That's a clean timeline. A clean timeline. That's what this was going to come down to. Not emotion. Not her tears or my anger. Just timestamps. Data. Evidence. She'd sold a story. I'd brought receipts. While they finished the paperwork, I watched other drivers slow down to stare. Someone filmed me from their car, phone pressed against the window like I was a scene in someone else's drama. The sergeant saw it too. He stepped into the lane and waved them forward, shutting down the spectacle. Then he leaned in close, voice low. "Do you have any texts or emails from your wife about this mediation?" "Yes," I said. "Several. Screenshot everything. Don't delete anything. If this goes to court, you'll need it." "Already done," I said. When the stolen status was finally cleared, the officer who'd first shouted commands at me walked back over with my license. His face was tight, embarrassed, maybe, or just frustrated that he'd been used. "Mr. Thorne," he said, "I'm sorry. The advisory made this a high-risk stop. Protocol." "I understand," I said. "That's exactly why she included it." His jaw worked. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Yeah." The sergeant handed me a card with an incident number written in blue ink. "You'll need this in court," he said. I slid it into my wallet like it was a key. Because it was. I got back into my Tesla. My hands were steady now. My coffee sat in a cup holder, cold and untouched. As I pulled back onto the highway with a police cruiser in front of me and another behind, my phone buzzed. A text from Genevieve. "Where are you?" No greeting. No concern. Just control. Then another message, 30 seconds later. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I didn't reply. I screenshotted both messages and forwarded them to my attorney, Alistair Vance, with a single line. "She just called a SWAT team on me. I'm en route with police escort. See you in 10. The cruisers moved through traffic with quiet authority, no sirens, no lights, just presence. It felt surreal, being protected by the same system Genevieve had tried to weaponize. 8 minutes from the courthouse, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, the transcription appeared. "Marcus, it's me. You need to pick up. We can still settle this the easy way. Don't make me do this the hard way." My stomach tightened. She wasn't calling to apologize. She was calling because she'd expected me in handcuffs, and I wasn't. Which meant she needed a new strategy. We pulled into the courthouse parking lot at 8:24. 6 minutes to spare. The sergeant stepped out of his cruiser and walked up to my window. "Mr. Thorne, I'm leaving one unit in the lot. If anything happens inside, anything, you find a bailiff and tell them immediately." "I will," I said. I grabbed my leather folder from the passenger seat. Inside, prenuptial agreement, mediation notice, property deed, financial disclosures, a forensic audit summary Vance had commissioned last week. Everything organized. Everything tabbed. Everything ready. As I stepped out of the car, the morning air felt colder than it should have. Sharper. The courthouse loomed ahead, gray stone, tall windows, the kind of building where lives get rewritten in 90-minute increments. I walked through security. Metal detector. ID check. A bailiff who barely looked up. And then I stepped into the main hallway. That's when I saw her. Genevieve stood near the mediation suite, dressed in a navy blazer and cream blouse, hair perfect, posture relaxed. She looked like someone waiting for a business meeting, not someone who just tried to get her husband killed. Her eyes scanned the hallway. Then they landed on me. And for just a second, just one flicker of a moment, her face went blank. Not angry. Not guilty. Just, surprised. She'd expected me in cuffs. Or at least rattled, late, scrambling. But I was here. On time. Calm. Escorted by police who now knew exactly what she'd done. She recovered fast. Her expression shifted into something softer, concerned, almost hurt. "Marcus, she said, stepping toward me. Thank God you're okay. I was so worried. I didn't let her finish. I held up my phone, turned the screen toward her so she could see the incident number, the screenshots of her texts, the timestamp on the 911 call. I have everything, I said quietly. The incident report. The timeline. Your texts. And I have witnesses. Her smile froze. Behind her, the mediation suite door opened. A woman in a gray suit, our mediator, stepped into the hallway. Thorn matter, she called. Party's ready. Genevieve leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. You think you're so smart, she hissed. But I didn't need you arrested, Marcus. I just needed you off balance. My stomach turned. Because she was right. Being late wasn't the goal. Being destabilized was. And as I looked down, I saw what she was holding, a thin manila folder, crisp and new, with fresh paperwork clipped to the front. She hadn't just tried to delay me. She'd been buying time to file something else. Please support this channel by subscribing to see how the truth unfolds in that mediation room. Like if you're rooting for evidence over lies. Comment below, have you ever been weaponized against? Share this with someone who needs to know, the truth still wins. But Genevieve had miscalculated one thing. She thought an architect was just someone who made buildings look pretty. She didn't understand that architecture is about load-bearing structures, about foundations that don't crack under pressure, about plans that account for every variable. And she'd forgotten that before I ever designed my first building, I'd learned to build arguments the same way, one verified fact at a time, weight distributed evenly, nothing left to chance. As I walked into that mediation room, I wasn't rattled. I was calculating exactly how many ways her plan was about to collapse. The mediation suite was on the 3rd floor. Genevieve walked ahead of me, heels clicking against marble with measured confidence. I stayed 3 steps behind, close enough to observe, far enough to avoid engaging. The hallway smelled like floor polish and stale coffee. Through the tall windows, I could see the parking lot below, the police cruiser still there, the sergeant leaning against the hood, watching the building like he expected something to go wrong. I pulled out my phone to text Vance that I'd arrived. That's when I saw the notification. Tesla alert, pin to drive feature disabled at 6:52 a.m. I stopped walking. 6:52 a.m. I'd left the house at 6:50. I'd been 2 blocks away when the pin was disabled. And the only other person with access to my Tesla account was the woman now walking into the mediation suite ahead of me. Genevieve hadn't just called the police. She'd remotely disabled my car's security feature, the one that required a 4-digit PIN before the vehicle could be driven. She'd created a window where, technically, someone could steal the car. Then she'd called 911 and reported it stolen. She hadn't been trying to delay me. She'd been manufacturing evidence. I screenshotted the notification and forwarded it to Vance with one line, she disabled my PIN remotely at 6:52. Check the Tesla logs. My phone buzzed immediately. Vance, don't say anything in mediation until I get there. I'm in the lobby. 2 minutes. I looked up. Genevieve had stopped at the door to the mediation suite. She was watching me, head tilted slightly, like she was trying to read whether I'd figured it out yet. I met her gaze and said nothing. She smiled. Then she pushed open the door and disappeared inside. I stayed in the hallway. My mind cycled back through the last 18 months, trying to pinpoint when amicable had turned into strategic. We'd met at a gallery opening. She'd been standing in front of a sculpture I'd designed the building to house. When she'd turned and asked me if I'd intentionally aligned the skylight to hit the piece at sunset, I'd known she wasn't just beautiful, she was sharp. The first year had been easy. Passionate. The kind of relationship where you finish each other's sentences and plan trips 6 months out because you can't imagine not being together. The drift came slowly. Work pulled me into late nights at the firm. She started her boutique, something she'd always wanted, something I'd supported. But somewhere between the business plan and the lease signing, we'd stopped talking and started coordinating. Calendars replaced conversations. Texts replaced touch. By the time we both admitted it wasn't working, it felt more like relief than heartbreak. The divorce had been her idea, but I'd agreed immediately. We'd hired a mediator instead of lawyers. We'd drafted a separation agreement over dinner like adults. We'd even joked that we were the first couple in history to end a marriage without hating each other. I'd believed that. Right up until this morning. The stairwell door opened, and Alistair Vance stepped into the hallway. Mid-50s, silver hair, tailored suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He walked like a man who'd never lost an argument he'd prepared for. "Marcus," he said, voice low and clipped. "We have a problem." "I know," I said. "She disabled my car's PIN remotely and then reported it stolen." Vance's jaw tightened. "That's not the only problem." He pulled a folded document from his briefcase and handed it to me. "She filed an emergency ex parte motion this morning. A temporary restraining order." I unfolded the paper. Emergency petition for temporary restraining order and order to show cause. Filed at 7:47 a.m. Petitioner, Genevieve Thorne. Grounds, respondent engaged in threatening behavior, stole petitioner's vehicle, and made statements indicating intent to harm petitioner. Petitioner fears for her safety. My hands didn't shake. But something cold settled in my chest. "She filed this after she called the police," I said. "Correct," Vance replied. "She used the police report as evidence. The TRO was granted at 8:10 a.m. You're prohibited from contacting her outside this mediation, from coming within 100 yards of her residence, and from engaging in any threatening or harassing behavior." I looked up. I was pulled over at gunpoint because of a false report, and now I'm the one with a restraining order. Vance's expression didn't change. "She's building a narrative, Marcus. Unstable husband. Dangerous behavior. And if she can make that narrative stick, she voids the prenup's good faith clause and forces a 50-50 split of everything." I stared at the document. At Genevieve's signature at the bottom. Neat. Confident. Practiced. "She planned this," I said quietly. "Yes," Vance said. "And she's several moves ahead. Which means we need to start digging into why she's willing to burn everything down." He gestured toward the mediation suite door. "Shall we?" I folded the restraining order and slid it into my folder. "Let's go see what else she's hiding." The mediation room was exactly what you'd expect: beige walls, a long conference table, artificial plants that had never seen sunlight. A water pitcher sat in the center next to a stack of paper cups no one would use. The mediator, a woman in her 60s named Patricia Brennan, sat at the head of the table with a yellow legal pad and a kind of neutral expression that comes from years of watching people destroy each other politely. Genevieve sat across from me, flanked by her attorney, Robert Caldwell. Caldwell was mid-40s, expensive suit, slick back hair, and the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He had a reputation for turning amicable divorces into blood sports. Vance and I sat opposite them. I placed my folder on the table. Genevieve's eyes flicked to it, then away. Brennan cleared her throat. "Thank you both for being here. I understand there have been some developments this morning. Before we proceed with the dissolution agreement, I'd like to address those." Caldwell leaned forward, expression grave. "Ms. Brennan, my client filed an emergency restraining order this morning due to credible safety concerns." Genevieve's hand went to her throat, a gesture so rehearsed it looked choreographed. Her eyes glistened. "I didn't want to do this," she said, voice trembling. "But Marcus has been unstable. Erratic. This morning he took my car without permission. The police had to pull him over. I was terrified he was coming here to hurt me. I stayed silent. Vance had been clear, let them talk first. Let them commit to the lie. Brennan's gaze shifted to me. Mr. Thorne, do you have a response? Yes, I said calmly. I slid the incident card across the table. The vehicle in question is registered to me. I have the title, registration, and insurance in my name. The police verified this on scene and cleared the stolen status. Here's the incident number. Genevieve's jaw tightened, but she recovered quickly. It was a misunderstanding, she said. I panicked. I thought. You filed the report at 7:02 a.m., I interrupted, keeping my voice level. I left my house at 6:50. I was already on the highway when you called 911. You told dispatch I was armed, suicidal, and headed here to confront you. None of that was true. Caldwell cut in smoothly. Ms. Brennan, my client was in a state of emotional distress. She made the call in good faith based on her genuine fear. Her genuine fear, I said, resulted in a SWAT-level response. I was detained at gunpoint because she wanted me delayed or arrested. Genevieve's eyes filled with tears. Real ones. She was good. I was protecting myself, she whispered. You don't know what it's been like. The threats. The anger. What threats? I asked. Show them. Show her the texts where I threatened you. Silence. Brennan looked at Genevieve. Do you have documentation of threats? It wasn't always explicit, Genevieve said. It was the way he looked at me. The tone. Vance leaned forward. Ms. Brennan, tone and looks aren't grounds for a TRO or for filing a false police report. What we have here is a deliberate attempt to create a paper trail that doesn't exist. Caldwell's expression hardened. He reached into his briefcase and slid a document across the table. Ms. Brennan, he said, given Mr. Thorne's behavior, his instability, the police involvement, the atmosphere of fear my client has endured, we're filing a motion to set aside the prenuptial agreement. I felt the room tilt slightly. Vance didn't flinch. On what grounds? Duress and unconscionability, Caldwell said smoothly. But more importantly, the prenup's good faith clause. Section 7.3 states that if either party engages in criminal conduct or behavior demonstrating reckless endangerment during the dissolution process, the agreement becomes voidable. Mr. Thorne's actions this morning, stealing a vehicle, creating a dangerous police confrontation, constitute reckless endangerment. There it was. The real play. Genevieve wasn't trying to delay the mediation. She was trying to void the prenup entirely. Force a 50-50 split of everything. Including the house we built together, the one I designed, the one she'd contributed 30% to, the one the prenup protected as mine. Brennan looked pale. This is highly irregular. I'm not equipped to adjudicate criminal allegations or constitutional challenges to a prenup. We're not asking you to, Caldwell said. We're simply putting Mr. Thorne and his counsel on notice. If we can't resolve this amicably today, we'll be filing in Superior Court tomorrow. Vance's voice was ice. You're threatening litigation based on a false police report. That's extortion. That's advocacy, Caldwell shot back. Genevieve dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I just want what's fair, she said softly. I don't want to fight. But I also don't want to be bullied. I stared at her. At the woman I'd shared a bed with for 3 years. The woman I'd trusted with my bank accounts, my passwords, my future. She stared back, and for just a moment, the mask slipped. I saw something cold behind her eyes. Calculating. Brennan cleared her throat. I think we need to adjourn and reconvene when cooler heads prevail. I'm not comfortable proceeding under these circumstances. Understood, Caldwell said, standing. He gathered his papers with the efficiency of someone who'd gotten exactly what he wanted. Genevieve stood, smoothing her skirt. She looked at me one last time. I hope you'll reconsider, she said quietly. Before this gets worse. Then she walked out, Caldwell trailing behind her like a shadow. The door clicked shut. Vance turned to me, his expression dark. She's several moves ahead, Marcus, he said. We need to start digging into why she's willing to burn everything down. Because people don't call SWAT teams and file fraudulent TROs unless they're hiding something worse. I looked down at the motion to void the prenup, still sitting on the table. Then let's find out what she's hiding, I said. Vance's office occupied the 18th floor of a glass tower downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, but I wasn't there for the view. I was there because polite mediation was over, and what came next required precision. Vance sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, eyes sharp. First things first, he said. We prove she manufactured the police incident. Then we figure out why. He pressed the intercom. Send in Kozlov. The door opened, and a man in his 30s entered, jeans, hoodie, laptop bag slung over one shoulder. He looked more like a grad student than an expert witness, but Vance didn't hire amateurs. Marcus, this is Dmitry Kozlov. Digital forensics. He's going to pull your Tesla's event logs. Dmitry nodded at me, already opening his laptop. I'll need your login credentials for the Tesla account. And I'll need you to authorize a data request through Tesla's legal team. I pulled out my phone and logged in. What exactly are you looking for? Timestamp on every remote command issued to your vehicle, Dmitry said, typing rapidly. PIN disables, location queries, app logins. If she accessed your car remotely, it'll show up in the server logs. He worked in silence for 3 minutes. Then he turned the screen toward me. There, he said, pointing to a line of code. 6:52 a.m. PIN to drive feature disabled. Command issued from IP address 192.168.1.47. What does that mean? I asked. It means someone logged into your Tesla account from a device on your home Wi-Fi network and remotely disabled the security feature. He scrolled down. And here, 7:05 a.m., same IP address, PIN re-enabled. Vance leaned forward. She disabled it, called the police, then re-enabled it after he was already pulled over. Correct, Dmitry said. And I can pull the geolocation data for her phone at those timestamps. If she was at the mediation center when she filed the report, we can prove she knew exactly where the car was. I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't panic. This wasn't anger. This was evidence. How fast can you have a full report? Vance asked. 48 hours, Dmitry said. You have 24. Dmitry nodded and left. Vance turned to me. Now we follow the money. 2 hours later, I was back in Vance's conference room. This time, a woman sat across from me, late 30s, sharp blazer, a laptop covered in financial software stickers. Priya Mehta. Forensic accountant. Mr. Thorne, she said, shaking my hand. Alistair tells me you have joint accounts with your wife. We do. Or we did. The prenup specifies how they're to be divided. Good, Priya said. I'll need access to every account, checking, savings, business, credit cards. And I'll need 12 months of statements. I slid a folder across the table. Already pulled them. She raised an eyebrow, impressed. Architect and organized. I like that. She opened her laptop and began uploading files. As she worked, I asked, what are you looking for? Patterns, she said. Unusual transfers. Payments to vendors that don't make sense. Anything that suggests funds are being moved somewhere they shouldn't be. I thought about Genevieve's boutique. She'd opened it 14 months ago, a high-end home goods store in a trendy neighborhood. I'd supported the idea. I'd even helped her secure the lease. She has a business account for her boutique, I said. But she's been pulling from our joint account for operating costs. She said it was temporary. Priya's fingers paused over the keyboard. How much? I'm not sure. Maybe 20,000-30,000. You don't know exactly. I shook my head. I trusted her. Priya's expression softened slightly. Let's see what the numbers say. While Priya worked, I did my own research. I pulled up Genevieve's boutique website, scrolled through her Instagram, cross-referenced her business filings with the state. One name kept appearing, Corinne Duclos. Listed as a consultant on the boutique's LLC paperwork. Frequent appearances in Genevieve's social media. Mentioned in a local business profile as her creative partner. I'd never heard Genevieve mention her. I searched Corinne's name. LinkedIn profile, marketing consultant, operations strategist. No specific clients listed. No clear business address. Just vague language about helping boutique brands scale. I texted Vance, who is Corinne Duclos. She's listed as a partner in Genevieve's boutique, but I've never met her. His reply came back in 30 seconds, looking into her now. An hour later, Priya looked up from her laptop. Her expression had changed. She wasn't just focused anymore. She was disturbed. Mr. Thorne, she said carefully, I'm seeing a pattern of transfers from your joint account to a vendor called Meridian Consulting Group. $75,000 over the past 12 months. Small increments, 3,000 here, 5,000 there. Just under the threshold that would trigger automatic fraud alerts. My stomach tightened. I've never heard of Meridian Consulting. Neither has the IRS, Priya said. Because it doesn't exist. The EIN is registered, but there's no business activity, no tax filings, no employees. It's a shell. A shell for what? She turned her screen toward me. That's what I'm trying to find out. But the money doesn't stop at Meridian. It's being transferred again within 48 hours of each deposit. Routed through 2 intermediary accounts, then. She trailed off, scrolling rapidly. Then what? Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, then at me. It's my contact at the Financial Crimes Unit. I need to take this. She stepped out of the room. I sat there, staring at the spreadsheet on her screen. Rows and rows of transfers. Dates. Amounts. All of it structured. All of it deliberate. Priya came back 2 minutes later. Her face was pale. The money trails to a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands, she said quietly. This isn't sloppy bookkeeping, Mr. Thorne. This is structured embezzlement. The room went silent. Vance's voice came through the speakerphone on the table. Priya, can you trace the Cayman account to a beneficiary? Working on it, she said. But based on the pattern and the timing, this started right after she opened the boutique, I'd bet everything it's tied to Genevieve. Or someone very close to her. I thought about Corinne Duclos. The ghost partner. The consultant with no clients. Find her, I said. Find out who she really is. Priya nodded. Already on it. Priya spread 3 printed documents across Vance's conference table like she was laying out evidence at a crime scene. Wire transfer records. Corporate filings. A network diagram showing how money moved from our joint account through 4 different entities before disappearing offshore. Meridian Consulting Group is owned by a holding company called Apex Global Services, she said, tapping the first page. Apex is registered in Delaware, minimal disclosure requirements. But Apex has a parent company, Silverton Holdings, Limited, registered in Georgetown, Cayman Islands. Vance leaned over the diagram. And Silverton's beneficiaries? Hidden behind nominee directors, Priya said. But I found something interesting. The law firm that set up Silverton also filed paperwork for another entity last year, a boutique retail LLC in Genevieve's name. I felt the pieces clicking into place. The same law firm handled both. Same firm. Same attorney. Filed within 3 weeks of each other. Priya pulled up another document on her laptop. And here's where it gets better. The email address on file for Silverton Holdings. It's registered to a domain called Duclos Strategies. Corinne, I said. Corinne, Priya confirmed. I ran a background check. Corinne Duclos, age 37, dual US-Canadian citizenship. She's worked for 3 different offshore wealth management firms in the last decade. Her specialty? Helping high-net-worth individuals move assets discreetly. Vance's expression darkened. She's not a creative consultant. She's a financial architect. Exactly, Priya said. And based on the timing, Genevieve brought her in about 14 months ago, right when she started siphoning money. I sat back, processing. The boutique was never meant to succeed. It was cover. It's a front, Priya said. Genevieve funnels money out of your joint account, labels it as business expenses, routes it through Meridian, and Corinne moves it offshore where you can't touch it. Vance stood, pacing. So the police report, the TRO, the motion to void the prenup, it's all misdirection. She's buying time. Buying time for what? I asked. To drain the accounts before you discover the fraud, Vance said. And to create enough chaos that when you do discover it, you're too buried in criminal allegations and restraining orders to fight back effectively. Priya nodded. The prenup protects premarital assets, but it also has clauses about marital business fraud. If we can prove she embezzled from joint accounts during the marriage, the prenup's penalty provisions kick in. She doesn't just lose her claim to the house, she has to repay everything she stole, plus damages. Can we prove it? I asked. We can prove the money moved, Priya said. What we need is proof she directed it. Bank signatures, emails, transaction authorizations with her digital fingerprint. Vance pulled out his phone. I'm filing a subpoena for all communications between Genevieve and Corinne. Emails, texts, everything. And I'm requesting access to Genevieve's devices. She'll fight that, I said. Let her, Vance replied. The harder she fights, the guiltier she looks. 2 days later, Vance called me back to his office. Dimitri was there, along with someone new, a woman in her 40s wearing a police department windbreaker. Marcus, this is Detective Sarah Ortiz, Vance said. She's with the Financial Crimes Unit. I brought her in to review the body cam footage from your traffic stop. Ortiz nodded at me. Mr. Thorne. I've seen the footage. And I've seen your wife's 911 call transcript. They don't match. She opened her laptop and played the audio. Genevieve's voice, breathless and frantic, he took my car. He's been unstable for weeks. He mentioned his life insurance yesterday. I think he's going to hurt me. Please, you have to stop him. Then Ortiz played the body cam footage. Me, hands up, calm, cooperative. The officer's voice, why are you asking about the timestamp? My response, because I know who did this. And I know why. Your heart rate, Ortiz said, was it elevated during the stop? Of course, I said. I had rifles pointed at me. We thought so, Dimitri cut in. He pulled up a chart on his screen. Which is why we subpoenaed your smartwatch data. Apple Watch, right? I nodded. Your watch records continuous heart rate monitoring, he said. At 6:50 a.m., when you left your house, your heart rate was 68 beats per minute. Resting. At 7:18 a.m., when the stop was initiated, your heart rate spiked to 165. The pattern of a surprised, terrified man, not someone who'd been agitated or aggressive beforehand. Vance smiled grimly. Biometric data doesn't lie. If you'd been planning a confrontation, your heart rate would have been elevated before the stop. This proves you were ambushed, not confrontational. Detective Ortiz closed her laptop. Mr. Thorne, based on what I've seen, I'm recommending charges against your wife for filing a false report. That's a felony in this state when it involves an armed response. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief. Not yet. But vindication. What happens now? I asked. Now, Vance said, we go on offense. We file our own motion in Superior Court. We present the Tesla logs, the body cam footage, the smartwatch data, and Priya's financial audit. We argue that Genevieve committed fraud, both against you and against the court. And we invoke the prenup's penalty clause. She'll escalate, I said. She already has, Vance replied. The question is whether we're ready when she does. I left Vance's office at 6 p.m. The city was settling into evening, streetlights flickering on, traffic thinning. I walked to my car, keys in hand. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't open it. But something told me I should. The message was short. Professional. Threatening. A drawn-out court battle will bleed your firm dry. Settle now, or watch everything you've built collapse. You've been warned. No name. No signature. But I knew exactly who it was from. I forwarded the message to Vance with 3 words, Corinne just surfaced. Then I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove home. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The hearing was set for 9 a.m. I arrived at Vance's office at 7:30. He was already there, suit pressed, coffee untouched, reviewing a document that stretched across his entire desk. It was a timeline, printed on 3 feet of paper, color-coded, cross-referenced with timestamps, phone records, GPS data, and financial transactions. The timeline of fabrication, Vance said, tapping the top. This is our narrative. Every lie she told, every manipulation she made, backed by objective evidence. I leaned over the desk. The timeline started at 6:50 a.m., the moment I left my house. Then 6:52 a.m., Tesla pin disabled remotely. 7:02 a.m., Genevieve's 911 call. 7:18 a.m., police stop initiated. 7:47 a.m., emergency TRO filed. Each event was annotated with supporting data. Cell tower pings. IP addresses. Bodycam timestamps. Smartwatch heart rate logs. She didn't make a single move that wasn't calculated, I said. Correct, Vance replied. Which is why we're going to dismantle her piece by piece. Judges don't like being lied to. And when they see this, he gestured at the timeline, they'll understand exactly what she did. He rolled up the paper and slid it into a protective tube. Then he pulled out a tablet, thin, black, expensive. Everything's on here, he said. Tesla logs, bodycam footage, financial audit, smartwatch data, the threatening text from Corinne. I'll present it sequentially. Each piece builds on the last. By the time I'm done, there won't be any doubt. I nodded. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. Then my phone buzzed. Vance glanced at me. What is it? I looked at the screen. A notification from a legal process server app. Documents served electronically. Click to view. I opened it. Emergency motion for exclusive use and possession of marital residence. Filed by Genevieve Thorne. Hearing date, today, 9 a.m. I read it twice, then handed the phone to Vance. He scanned it, his jaw tightening. She's asking the court to grant her sole possession of the house. Effective immediately. The house I designed, I said quietly. The house the prenup protects. She knows she's going to lose on the TRO, Vance said. So she's filed this as a backup play. If the court dissolves the restraining order, she still wants something to walk away with today. It's a power move. It's a stupid move, I said. No, Vance corrected. It's a desperate move. Which means she knows we have her. I stared at the motion. At Genevieve's lawyer's signature. At the argument that I posed a continuing threat and that she needed the house for her emotional and physical safety. Something hardened in my chest. Not anger. Not hate. Just clarity. She stopped being my wife the moment she called a SWAT team on me, I said. Vance looked at me for a long moment. Are you ready to do this? Because once we walk into that courtroom and present this evidence, there's no going back. We're not just dissolving a restraining order. We're accusing her of criminal fraud. Filing false reports. Embezzlement. The DA could bring charges. She could face jail time. I know, I said. And you're okay with that? I thought about the gun barrel pointed at my windshield. The body cam footage of me on my knees. The $75,000 she'd stolen. The offshore accounts. The manufactured crisis designed to destroy me. She made her choice, I said. Now I'm making mine. Vance nodded once. Then he picked up his tablet and briefcase. Let's go. The courthouse was the same gray stone building I'd walked into a week ago. But this time, I wasn't walking in rattled. I wasn't walking in defensive. I was walking in with evidence. We passed through security. Took the elevator to the 4th floor. The hallway outside Family Court Division 3 was crowded, lawyers in quiet conversation, clients sitting on benches clutching folders, a bailiff checking the docket. And then I saw her. Genevieve sat on a bench near the courtroom doors, flanked by Caldwell and another woman I didn't recognize, probably a paralegal. She wore a cream blouse and navy skirt, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked small. Fragile. Exactly like someone who needed protection. She saw me and looked away quickly, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Caldwell stood and intercepted us. Alistair, he said, voice smooth. I assume you've seen our motion regarding the residence. I have, Vance replied coolly. And I assume you've prepared for the consequences of filing it. Caldwell's smile didn't waver. My client is simply seeking safety. Your client, Vance said, is seeking leverage. And she's about to lose it. The bailiff opened the courtroom doors. Thorn Matter. Counsel, please enter. Caldwell gestured for Genevieve to stand. She rose slowly, like someone afraid of what was coming. We walked into the courtroom. It was smaller than I'd expected. Wood-paneled walls. A judge's bench at the front. A court reporter in the corner. Rows of seats for observers, mostly empty except for a few law students and what looked like a victim's advocate. Caldwell and Genevieve took the petitioner's table on the left. Vance and I took the respondent's table on the right. Vance placed his tablet on the table. Just one device. Thin. Black. Unassuming. But inside it was everything. Genevieve glanced at it, then at Vance. For just a second, I saw something flicker in her expression. Not fear. Calculation. Like she was trying to figure out what we had. The bailiff stood. All rise. The Honorable Judge Marianne Aris presiding. Judge Aris entered, late 50s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense expression. She took her seat and opened the file in front of her. Thorn dissolution, she said. I see we have an emergency TRO up for review and a motion for exclusive use of the marital residence. Counsel, are we ready to proceed? Caldwell stood. Yes, Your Honor. Vance stood. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Aris looked at Genevieve, then at me. Then at the file again. Let's begin, she said. Vance tapped his tablet once. The screen lit up. And the war began. Caldwell stood, buttoning his jacket with the practiced confidence of someone who delivered this performance before. "Your Honor," he began, voice measured and grave, "my client, Genevieve Thorne, came to this court seeking protection from a man she once loved but now fears. On the morning of March 14th, Mr. Thorne stole her vehicle. When confronted, he became erratic. Police had to intervene with a high-risk stop. My client has endured weeks of instability, veiled threats, and emotional abuse. The temporary restraining order was not punitive, it was necessary." He gestured toward Genevieve, who sat with her hands folded, eyes downcast. "She simply wants to feel safe in her own home. That's why we've also requested exclusive use of the marital residence. Mr. Thorne's behavior has created an environment of fear. We ask that the TRO remain in place and that Ms. Thorne be granted immediate possession of the home." Caldwell sat. Judge Aris looked at Vance. "Counsel." Vance stood slowly, almost casually. He didn't touch his notes. He didn't raise his voice. He simply tapped his tablet once, and the courtroom's presentation screen lit up. "Your Honor," Vance said, "opposing counsel just told you a story. Now I'd like to show you what actually happened." He swiped the screen. A map appeared, geolocation data, time-stamped, color-coded. "This is cell tower data from the morning of March 14th. At 7:02 a.m., Ms. Thorne placed a 911 call reporting her vehicle stolen. She told dispatch she was at home when she discovered the theft." He zoomed in on the map. A red pin appeared. This is where her phone pinged when the call was made. Not her residence. The Family Court Mediation Center, 2.3 miles away. She wasn't discovering a theft. She was already at the location where the mediation hearing was scheduled to begin. Caldwell stood. "Your Honor, my client may have been confused about." "Sit down, counsel," Judge Aris said, eyes still on the screen. "I want to hear this." Vance swiped again. A new document appeared, Tesla server logs. At 6:52 a.m., 8 minutes before Mr. Thorne left his driveway, someone logged into his Tesla account and remotely disabled the vehicle's pin-to-drive security feature. This command was issued from an IP address registered to the Thorne's home Wi-Fi network. He highlighted a line of data. The only other person with access to Mr. Thorne's Tesla account is Ms. Thorne. At 7:05 a.m., 3 minutes after she called 911, the PIN was re-enabled. Same IP address. Judge Aris leaned forward. "Are you saying she disabled the security feature, then called the police?" "Yes, Your Honor," Vance said. "She created a window where the car could technically be stolen, called 911, then re-enabled the security once the report was filed. She manufactured the crime she reported." Genevieve's face remained neutral, but her fingers tightened around the tissue in her lap. Caldwell stood again. "Your Honor, this is speculation. My client had access to the account for legitimate purposes. Did she disable the security feature that morning or not?" Judge Aris asked. Caldwell hesitated. "The data may show access, but intent. Did she or didn't she? The logs indicate she did, but—" "Thank you, counsel. Sit down." Vance swiped again. Audio waveforms appeared on the screen. "Your Honor, this is the 911 call Ms. Thorne made at 7:02 a.m. He pressed play. Genevieve's voice filled the courtroom, breathless, panicked, tearful. "He took my car. He's been so unstable. He mentioned his life insurance yesterday. I'm terrified he's going to hurt me. Please, you have to stop him." Vance paused the audio. "Now," he said, "I'd like to show you what actually happened when police stopped Mr. Thorne." The screen shifted. Bodycam footage began playing. The officer's voice, "Exit the vehicle. Hands where I can see them. Marcus, hands up, calm. I'm exiting the vehicle now. My hands are visible." The officer, Asterisk, you're being detained. This vehicle was reported stolen. Marcus, I'm not armed. I'm not suicidal. That car is registered to me. Asterisk. The footage continued, Marcus cooperating, answering questions, providing documentation. No aggression. No instability. Just a man trying not to get shot. Vance stopped the video. Your Honor, Ms. Thorne described a man who was erratic, dangerous, suicidal. The body cam shows a man who was calm, cooperative, and confused. These two narratives cannot both be true. Judge Aris looked at Genevieve. Ms. Thorne, did you tell dispatch your husband was suicidal? Genevieve's voice was soft. I was afraid. I thought. Did you tell them he mentioned his life insurance? He did mention it, but... When? Silence. Ms. Thorne, when did your husband mention his life insurance? Genevieve glanced at Caldwell. He whispered something. She looked back at the judge. A few days before, she said quietly. In what context? I don't remember exactly. Judge Aris's expression hardened. You don't remember the context of a statement you cited as evidence of suicidal intent? Caldwell stood. Your Honor, my client was in distress. Your client, Judge Aris said, filed a police report that resulted in an armed response. I need to understand whether that report was accurate. Vance tapped his tablet again. A new chart appeared, heart rate data. Your Honor, this is biometric data from Mr. Thorne's smartwatch on the morning of March 14th. At 6:50 a.m., when he left his house, his heart rate was 68 beats per minute. Resting. Normal. He highlighted the graph. At 7:18 a.m., when the police stop was initiated, his heart rate spiked to 165 beats per minute. The physiological response of someone who was surprised and terrified, not someone who'd been agitated or planning a confrontation. Judge Aris studied the graph. So his elevated heart rate began when police pulled him over, not before. Correct, Your Honor. If Mr. Thorne had been unstable, aggressive, or suicidal, his heart rate would have been elevated before the stop. This data proves he was ambushed. The courtroom was silent. Judge Aris looked at Caldwell. Counsel, do you have any response to this evidence? Caldwell stood, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, biometric data can be interpreted many ways. Can it be fabricated? No, but... Then how do you explain the fact that your client's 911 call described a dangerous, unstable man, but every piece of objective evidence contradicts that description? Caldwell opened his mouth. Closed it. Your Honor, my client acted in good faith based on her fear. Fear of what? Judge Aris snapped. The evidence shows she wasn't at home. She remotely disabled his car's security. She called 911 from the Mediation Center. Where's the fear in that? That's premeditation. Genevieve's face had gone pale. Vance stood. Your Honor, we've shown how Ms. Thorne fabricated this incident. But with the court's permission, we'd like to show why. Judge Aris looked at him. You're saying there's more? Yes, Your Honor. Significantly more. She glanced at the clock. How much time do you need? 30 minutes. She nodded. We'll recess for 15. When we return, counsel, I expect you to explain why your client went to such lengths. The bailiff stood. All rise. Judge Aris left the bench. Caldwell turned to Genevieve, whispering urgently. Her hands were shaking. Vance leaned toward me. We've shown the how, he said quietly. Next, we show the why. I looked at Genevieve across the aisle. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked trapped. When court resumed, the air felt different. Heavier. Judge Aris returned to the bench with the kind of expression that said she'd stopped being neutral and started being suspicious. Vance stood. Your Honor, I'd like to call a witness. Priya Mehta, forensic accountant. Priya entered from the back of the courtroom, carrying a leather portfolio. She was sworn in and took the stand with the calm competence of someone who testified dozens of times. Vance approached. Ms. Mehta, did I retain you to conduct a financial audit of the Thorns joint accounts? Yes. And what did you find? Priya opened her portfolio and pulled out a bound report. Over the past 12 months, I identified $75,000 in transfers from the Thorns joint account to a vendor called Meridian Consulting Group. The transfers were structured in small increments, between $3,000 and $5,000 each, designed to avoid triggering automatic fraud alerts. What is Meridian Consulting Group? A shell company, Priya said. Registered EIN, no employees, no tax filings, no business activity. It exists solely to receive and transfer funds. Where did the money go after it reached Meridian? It was transferred again within 48 hours to a holding company called Silverton Holdings, Limited, registered in the Cayman Islands. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Aris leaned forward. Ms. Mehta, Vance continued, were you able to identify who controls Silverton Holdings? Nominee directors are listed, but I traced the entity's formation to a law firm that also set up Ms. Thorne's Boutique LLC. The same attorney filed both. And the email address on file for Silverton is registered to a domain called Duclos Strategies. Who is Duclos? Corinne Duclos. She's listed as a consultant for Ms. Thorne's boutique, but her background is in offshore wealth management. She's worked for 3 firms specializing in moving assets discreetly for high-net-worth clients. Vance turned to face Genevieve. So Ms. Thorne hired someone with expertise in hiding money, created a shell company, and siphoned $75,000 from a joint account into an offshore entity. That's correct, Priya said. Caldwell shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. This is a family court hearing, not a criminal trial. Ms. Mehta's testimony is prejudicial and irrelevant to the TRO. It's entirely relevant, Vance countered. Because it explains why Ms. Thorne filed a false police report. She wasn't afraid of my client. She was afraid of being caught. Judge Aris looked at Caldwell. I'll allow it. Overruled. Vance continued. Ms. Mehta, when did these transfers begin? 14 months ago. Right after Ms. Thorne opened her boutique. And when did they stop? They didn't. The last transfer was made 2 weeks ago. Vance turned back to Judge Aris. Your Honor, Ms. Thorne wasn't creating a business. She was creating a fraud. And when my clients started asking questions about their finances, she needed a distraction. So she manufactured a crisis, a stolen car, a police report, a restraining order, to bury him in legal chaos while she continued moving money offshore. Caldwell stood again, voice sharp. Your Honor, this is speculation. My client has every right to manage her business finances. With money stolen from a joint account? Vance shot back. Without her husband's knowledge or consent? That's not business management, counsel. That's embezzlement. Judge Aris held up a hand. Mr. Vance, what are you asking this court to do? Vance picked up a document from his table. Your Honor, I'm asking the court to uphold the prenuptial agreement between the parties, specifically, Section 7.3, the Bad Faith Conduct Clause. He handed a copy to the judge and to Caldwell. This clause states, if either party engages in criminal fraud, filing of false reports, or acts of reckless endangerment during the dissolution process, the financial terms of this agreement become voidable at the option of the non-breaching party. Additionally, the breaching party forfeits any claim to assets acquired during the marriage and must repay all marital funds misappropriated. Caldwell's face went pale. Your Honor, that clause is punitive and unconscionable. It's a standard penalty provision, Vance said. And Ms. Thorne triggered it. She filed a false police report that resulted in an armed response. She manipulated her husband's vehicle remotely. She embezzled $75,000. Those are criminal acts, Your Honor. And under the prenup, they have consequences. Judge Aris read the clause in silence. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the court reporter's fingers tapping keys. Finally, the judge looked up. Miss Thorne, did you sign this prenuptial agreement? Genevieve's voice was barely audible. Yes. Did you have independent legal counsel review it before signing? Yes. And did you understand this penalty clause? Genevieve glanced at Caldwell. He whispered something. She nodded. Yes. Judge Aris set the document down. Mr. Caldwell, your client is facing serious allegations. Filing a false report. Embezzlement. Fraud. Do you have any evidence that contradicts what's been presented? Caldwell stood, jaw tight. Your Honor, the financial transactions can be explained. My client was funding her business. With money she moved to the Cayman Islands. Judge Aris said. Through shell companies. Without disclosure. She had a right to. She had a right to disclose, the judge interrupted. She didn't. And she certainly didn't have a right to file a police report claiming her husband stole a car he legally owned and was driving to a mediation hearing she knew he'd be attending. Caldwell opened his mouth, then closed it. Judge Aris looked at Vance. Counsel, you mentioned smartwatch data earlier. Do you have that available? Yes, Your Honor. Vance tapped his tablet. The heart rate graph reappeared on the screen. This shows Mr. Thorne's heart rate was normal, 68 beats per minute, when he left his house. It spiked to 165 only when the police stop began. This is objective, biometric proof that he was surprised, not agitated. He wasn't planning a confrontation. He was ambushed. Judge Aris studied the graph for a long moment. Then she looked at Genevieve. Miss Thorne, she said, voice cold, you didn't just file a false report. You weaponized law enforcement. You put your husband's life at risk. You put officers' lives at risk. And you did it to cover up financial fraud. Genevieve said nothing. Her hands were folded so tightly her knuckles were white. Judge Aris looked at Caldwell. Does your client have anything to say? Caldwell whispered to Genevieve. She shook her head. No, Your Honor, Caldwell said. Judge Aris closed the file in front of her. I'm going to retire to chambers to consider my ruling. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. The bailiff stood. All rise. Judge Aris left the bench. The courtroom exhaled. Vance turned to me, his expression unreadable. We did everything we could, he said quietly. Now we wait. Across the aisle, Genevieve sat frozen, staring at the table in front of her. Caldwell leaned in, whispering urgently. But she didn't respond. She just sat there, silent, as everything she'd built began to collapse. 30 minutes felt like 3 hours. When the bailiff finally called us back in, the courtroom was silent except for the shuffle of feet and the creak of wooden benches. Judge Aris returned to the bench, her expression settled into something firm and final. I've reviewed the evidence, she began, and I'm prepared to rule. Genevieve sat rigid, staring straight ahead. Caldwell's pen was poised over his notepad, unmoving. The temporary restraining order is dissolved, effective immediately, Judge Aris said. The evidence presented demonstrates that Ms. Thorne filed a false police report with malicious intent. Her claim of fear is contradicted by her own actions, remotely disabling Mr. Thorne's vehicle security, calling 911 from the Mediation Center, and fabricating allegations of instability and suicidal intent. Caldwell started to rise. Judge Aris held up a hand. I'm not finished. The prenuptial agreement between the parties is upheld in full. Section 7.3, the bad faith conduct clause, is triggered. Ms. Thorne has forfeited her claim to any marital assets, including the residence. Additionally, she is ordered to repay the $75,000 misappropriated from the joint account, plus interest and damages as calculated by the forensic accountant. Genevieve's face drained of color. Furthermore, Judge Aris continued, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of filing a false police report, wire fraud, and embezzlement. Ms. Thorne, you are advised to seek criminal counsel. She looked at me. Mr. Thorne, you are awarded attorney's fees and costs in full. The motion for exclusive use of the marital residence is denied. The TRO is dissolved. This hearing is concluded. The gavel came down once. Sharp. Final. All rise. Judge Aris left the bench. The courtroom exhaled. I didn't move. I just sat there, letting the weight of it settle. Vance placed a hand on my shoulder. It's over, he said quietly. I nodded. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. In the hallway, Caldwell walked quickly toward the elevators, phone already pressed to his ear. Genevieve stood near the courtroom doors, alone, staring at nothing. I started to walk past her. Marcus. I stopped. Turned. She stepped toward me, and for a moment, I thought she might apologize. That the mask might finally drop and the woman I'd once loved might surface. Instead, her face twisted with rage. You did this, she hissed. You ruined everything. I built that business. I earned that money. You had no right. I pulled out my phone and held it up, recording. She froze. What are you doing? Documenting, I said calmly. Everything you say right now is being added to the file for the civil fraud lawsuit and the criminal complaint I'll be pressing this afternoon. Her mouth opened. Closed. If you have anything else to say, I continued, say it to my attorney. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard her voice crack, desperate. Marcus, wait. I didn't stop. Vance was waiting by the elevator. As the doors closed, I saw Genevieve standing alone in the hallway, her perfect facade finally shattered. 1 month later. The house was quiet. I'd spent the first week after the hearing working late, avoiding the silence. But eventually, I came home. And I started rebuilding. The DA's office had opened a formal investigation into Genevieve and Corinne. Priya's forensic audit had been submitted as evidence. The Cayman accounts were frozen pending litigation. Corinne had hired a lawyer and stopped responding to subpoenas. The divorce was proceeding under the original prenuptial agreement. Genevieve had signed the dissolution papers without contest. She'd moved out of the city entirely, someone said she was staying with family upstate. I didn't ask. I didn't care. The house felt different now. Lighter. Like a structure that had been carrying too much weight and could finally breathe. I stood at my drafting table in the home office, the same table where I'd designed the house, where I'd sketched 100 buildings, where I'd once believed I could build a life with someone who turned out to be a stranger. On the table in front of me was a new project. A small community center. Pro bono work. Something that mattered. I picked up my pencil and started sketching the foundation. Load-bearing walls. Reinforced supports. Clean lines. No weak points. The first rule of architecture is simple: if the foundation isn't solid, nothing above it will stand. I'd learned that the hard way. But I'd also learned something else, that the truth, when built on evidence, doesn't crack under pressure. It doesn't bend. It doesn't break. It just stands. Outside, the late afternoon sun slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the blueprints. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the faint wail of a siren, urgent, then fading. I didn't flinch. I just kept drawing. Because the foundation, this time, would be built on evidence. And nothing, no lie, no scheme, no desperate act of sabotage, would ever shake it again. Subscribe for more stories where facts defeat fraud. Like if justice with receipts is your kind of ending. Comment what you would have done differently. Share this with someone fighting their own battle.